Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. On this episode, I'm joined by Vincent LaRussa and Paul Poulos of the Dexters, and we're going to talk all about the bands that influenced us, the guitarists that influenced us, the vocalists, and how that impacted the songwriting for Paul and Vincent on their newest CD from the Dexters, Atypical. It's a lot of fun in this episode. I think you guys are going to really enjoy it. Lots to cover, so let's jump in and let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to the latest episode of the Rock Experience with Mike Brunn. Today I'm excited to have with me not one, but two guests, one half of the Dexters band. Please welcome Vincent LaRussa and Paul Poulos. How are you guys doing today?
Great. Thanks
Good.
for having us on.
Oh,
Of course.
well,
absolutely.
I'll upgrade to great. Since he said great, I'll upgrade to great. I originally said good, so
Well,
yeah.
you know what? You could be good. That's okay, Vin. You could just be good.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Well, I wanted to have you guys on. You guys have an exciting new CD coming out, your first CD, Atypical. And I thought this is a perfect opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about the band, a little bit about some of our influences, some of the music that we've grown up loving. I know, Paul, you've got some cool stories about playing L'Amour back in the day, so I'm kind of excited to hear that. So I just thought it would be kind of a good opportunity to kind of talk music, talk 70s, 80s, 90s, rock and roll, and at the same time, talk about your exciting CDs coming out. So I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it, guys.
Oh, wait.
Likewise.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you for having us on.
Of course, Vin, I've known you for, 850 years, I think it is at this point. Paul, we just met before we started recording. How did the two of you guys get connected and start writing songs together?
So we have a mutual friend, Matt, who kind of got us together as just to jam, the three of us. You know right away, either you have a chemistry with people or you don't. So when we all got together, it just all felt really, really, really right and comfortable. Paul came down to my studio and he started playing me, some ideas. And all of a sudden it was like, we didn't sit down to say like, oh, we're going to write some songs together. It was just like, he had played me an idea for a song, which I believe, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it might be the title, not the title track, but the first track on the CD.
Hold on.
Hold On?
Actually. Yeah.
Oh, it was Hold On. Okay.
It was funny because I just
And-
was messing around and Vin was like, that's a song.
Yeah. It was great. It was a great, like, immediate connection. And immediately when he played, it kind of brought me back to the 80s. It kind of reminded me of like something like when I was doing the stuff in the late 80s. And then it just starts rolling. It just kind of just went one song and then another song. And I don't know, Paul, you give your ideas of what you recollect.
It was kind of like that. And then when we were like, hey, the three of us, are having such a great time, maybe we should find a singer.
Yeah.
And we weren't able to. And it was like, you know what? Vin has the better voice of the three of us. Why doesn't he just get out front? I mean, and who knew that he was going to be such a good front man? Because he's not, now he has a great voice, but he really knows how to get the audience participating.
Yeah.
So it worked out. And then, we found John, our drummer.
So, Vin, you mentioned before that you guys are close to the same age, and you mentioned similar influences, and certainly I know your influences, the Kiss, the Beatles, and some of that stuff. Paul, what were your influences growing up, and who influenced you as a guitar player?
Well, definitely the two that you just mentioned, the Beatles when I was really young.
Yep.
I remember having a Hard Day's Night, and I forgot the other album, but my brother gave it away to somebody, which I still hold it against him.
It's only worth $1 million.
Yeah.
Huh?
It's only worth $1 million now.
Right, yeah, it was very upsetting.
Yeah.
But I loved the Beatles when I was younger, and then I got into Kiss. Alive, obviously, was the album. Then I got Hotter Than Hell, then Destroyer, great albums, all great albums. And then I found Zeppelin, which then brought me to Van Halen, and Queen around the same time. So it was kind of, my influences then became very guitar centric. I was like always looking for what band had a really good guitar player, because I was just focused on being a better guitar player. So, and then from Eddie Van Halen, you heard about Alan Holdsworth. He's more of like a jazz fusion guy. And, those are guys that I can say that there was a time when I was trying to pick up some Ace Frehley licks in the very beginning when I was really young, but I think my hands were too small to get it down at that point. But I probably didn't have as good a vibrato as him at that point.
Interesting. So, I mean, one of the things that to me, as I listened to the CD, and Ben, you seem like you want to say something, but give me a moment. Yeah. To me, I hear some of these bands you're talking about, and when you mentioned like an Eddie Van Halen, and I'll be honest, some of the songs on the CD, I could hear in some of the solos like a Eddie Van Halen flavoring to some of your soloing, right? So I'm not surprised to hear you say Eddie was an influence.
Yeah, and it came to a point where I played way too much like him that I stopped putting my my finger on the fretboard, so I started.
And he started playing the flute.
Yeah.
But did it smoke as he played his solo?
Yeah. Wow, that would have been cool.
Smoking flute. That's it. Oh man,
that's great.
Yeah, sometimes you can get too focused on one person and you sound too much like them. So I made a conscious effort to. So I might have, you might hear a little bit, but I don't think I blatantly sound like him.
God, no, definitely not. And I find it interesting. I mean, because to me, as a huge Kiss fan all my life, and we were talking slightly about this before we started, I hear Ace Frehley's name come up, and my first thought is, much like Jimmy Page, a bit of a sloppy guitar player. And I don't know, even though I have them hanging up on the wall behind me, you guys know I'm not a guitar player. But to me, Ace Frehley's style of guitar playing and Eddie Van Halen's sound so different. For you as a guitar player, are they very different types of guitarists and lead guitar players?
Yes. Without being insulting to one, I'm just going to say yes. They're very different. I mean, Ace Frehley, I think in the very beginning, he also had a good melodic sense.
Yes.
I looked at Ace Frehley as Guitar 101. It was a great place to start. It's got a lot of like cool Chuck Berry licks in there. But then you kind of graduate to someone like Eddie Van Halen. And of course, then you got the Yngwie Malmsteens and so on.
Right. In the 80s, were you into, I'll say, the ones that were influenced by Eddie, whether it was like George Lynch, Vito Bratta, Nuno Betancourt? Were you into those guitarists as well, or did you veer off in another direction? It's okay to say no.
George Lynch, no, yeah, I didn't appreciate them as much as Eddie Van Halen. I mean, Vito, okay. I thought he gleaned a little too much, off of Eddie Van Halen. George Lynch had a little bit more of his own style, and he was cool, but I didn't really. It was more the songs. I mean, the Van Halen songs to me were much better than Dokken's songs. And Dokken was still a good band. I enjoyed them as well.
Right.
Paul,
but that's the other thing. Eddie Van Halen was not just because of his leads. He had great rhythm sense. I love the way he, his rhythms.
Right. Well, to your point, Paul, I mean, in fairness, comparing almost anybody to Eddie Van Halen, Eddie Van Halen is going to win that discussion every day of the week.
Well,
right.
One of the things, Paul, tell me, and I think this is cool. When you first heard the Rat song, you remember you were telling me about
Round and Round?
Yeah. Tell me, give a little bit about that.
There's a song is great when it's like you hear it the first time, and that you want to hear it again. That's when you know a song just has all the right ingredients.
Yep.
Round and Round was a song like that.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool melodic, great rhythm stuff, great lead. Warren DeMartini did some great stuff on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to take the kind of the moderator here.
Go ahead for a moment.
So we didn't mention Warren DeMartini. So how do you compare Paul at Warren DeMartini up against what was going on at the time? Because I mean, what was that, 84? Round and Round came out?
Yeah.
Out of the cellar around 83, 84?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously Eddie Van Halen was already fully established. Some of these other guys like George Lynch weren't really fully, and Dokken wasn't at the level at Rat, because if you remember that time, you basically had Quiet Riot, who kind of started it all the making metal popular. Def Leppard, Rat, and those were the kind of the bands, with Rock of Ages, Photograph, Round and Round, Lay It Down, and stuff like that. So, Paul, how did Warren? What was it about Warren DeMartini's as compared to some of the other guys you spoke about that stood out to you as far as his guitar playing?
I would put Warren right up there with George Lynch, both great players. I think Warren DeMartini was able to play over better songs. And that's not to diminish, Doc, and like I said, they had good songs too. Just, I think to me, the Rat songs appeal to me a little bit more melodic.
Interesting. Yeah. Now,
I felt he was a smoother guitar player too, Warren DeMartini. Like I said, I like George Lynch, but the problem is that you wind up comparing all of them to Eddie Van Halen. They kind of came after Eddie, so it's like, oh, he's good, but he's not Eddie Van Halen, like you said before, Mike.
Right. No, and then that's, I think, in the 80s, everybody was copying each other, right? And that's why I brought up all those different 80s guitarists, because to me, they were all basically copying Eddie Van Halen's style. Right. Which, if you're going to copy, best that you copy from the best, I guess. So,
absolutely.
But the interesting thing is, when I'm working with Paul and I'm asking him questions about songs, and I've kind of gone and tried to learn solos and things of songs, he'll tell me, like, listen to Highway to Hell and learn that guitar solo. Because listen to Angus Young. And Angus Young is more of in the Jimmy Page, Ace Frehley of style or, technique, I would say, right, Paul? Would you say more along those lines than obviously a Eddie Van Halen, George Lynch, and Warren DeMartini?
What? I'm sorry, I was changing my mic. What style did you say?
I was saying that when you mentioned to me about learning Highway to Hell, the guitar solo, and Angus Young is more with like the Ace Frehleys and Jimmy Page of that style of guitar playing, Yes. But I'm trying to say that Paul was also like, don't just listen to Eddie Van Halen. Don't just listen to these guys who are doing all these, two-hand tapping and this really fast stuff, but listen to, the melodic stuff that these other guys, like an Angus Young, who's as I've known all these years, he's a very underrated guitar player. Not only just rhythms, but his leads are,
he has a great vibrato.
Right.
And he has a great vibrato.
I'm not being funny there. I mean, he really does. And that was one of the reasons I said to him, listen to that solo, listen to him in general. His vibrato just is it sings.
Yep.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed, beyond, before Van Halen. I was also like I said, Jimmy Page, Ace Frehley. There were a lot of guitar players in the 70s. Neil Schon is another one who was just, fantastic.
Sure. So, Paul, question for you then. What's your thought 80s Van Halen, like Sammy Van Halen versus Dave Van Halen?
Guitar playing wise or songwriting wise?
Go for both.
I think he had a little more fire during the David Lee Roth period, but he was still great with the Sammy. And with the Sammy stuff, it was more polished. But it was still great. I mean, I still love the songs. I'm a Van Halen fan no matter what. I even liked it with the Gary Sharon, even though that obviously wasn't good. I'm a Eddie Van Halen fan. So I think the Sammy stuff was a little more polished. I mean, you kind of saw when they went back to when they did a different kind of Truth. They kind of went back to that old school Van Halen, more raw, more charismatic. Dave with his charismatic way.
Absolutely. You mentioned your song before, Hold On, right? Which is one of the first ones that sounds like you guys wrote together. And that was one of the ones, not necessarily the solo itself, then the notes that you were playing. But one of the things I liked about that song on your CD is all of a sudden when you start soloing, I noticed it sounded like the rhythm guitar kind of drops away during your solo. Yeah. And it instantly gave me that thought of Van Halen or Extreme, where it's usually just like the one guitar player doing their solo with no rhythm parts over it. Was that a conscious decision as you guys were recording to kind of like tip of the hat to Van Halen in a way, even though, like I said, the notes, I'm not saying what Eddie Van Halen to the T, but I felt that Van Halen vibe during that solo.
Yeah, it was definitely conscious. I always loved playing with just guitar, bass, and drums. Not that I mind having a rhythm guitar, but there's just something more freeing about just the bass. If the bass, if the bass player is a good bass player and they're holding down the fort, it gives you a much wider spectrum to solo over.
Yep. And then to me, even coming out of the solo, I couldn't pinpoint which Van Halen song it was, but I'm like, this again just feels like classic 70s Van Halen vibe to me coming out of the solo there. Am I off base with that, or were you a Van thinking?
I take that as a compliment. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. And then to me, it was great because there's a left turn. All of a sudden, I'm getting like an 80s Aerosmith vibe feel, because all of a sudden you guys added like some horns into it. And I'm like, whoa, where'd this come from all of a sudden? And so that's one of the things I love about the CDs. It kind of, to me, takes all of these different bands that I grew up listening to. And like I just mentioned, in like a 90-second moment there, you got me thinking Van Halen. You had me thinking Extreme a little bit. Then all of a sudden I'm thinking 80s Aerosmith a little bit. It was just kind of like, damn, this is all the music. So it felt comfortable. It felt, how do I say it? It felt like I've heard it before, yet I've never heard it before, if that makes sense what I'm saying. And so is that
I give all that credit goes to Vin. He has a great ear and a knack for, I think he's listened to a lot of music.
Yeah.
And that he just, all of that just culminates into his brain, and he's able, like when he put those horns in there, I would never have thought to put horns in there. So when he did that, I was like, wow, that was great.
Hold on, just hold on to the one who loves.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I can tell you why. I mean, yes, I've listened to a lot of music, but I specifically remember, watching the making of Pump, the Aerosmith video. And so, which is, if nobody's ever seen that, it's a fantastic documentary. And they go working with Bruce. That was Bruce Fairbairn?
I think so.
Right.
I think so.
God rest his soul.
Fact check me, but I think so.
But they go through all the songs. But anyway, there's a moment or in the video where they're bringing in the horn section for I forget what song, and I was fascinated by that at the time. And you know me, I've always been very fascinated on listening to tracks, isolated tracks, and I just remember thinking how cool it was when Aerosmith was incorporating horns into their music. And I think even on the third, by the time I think Cinderella did like the third album, Heartbreak Station, they were putting horns in. I was really into those bands, those metal bands that were kind of trying to be not every album sounding like the last album. They were trying to add ingredients and a little bit more sophistication, and sounds that I listened with R&B music or jazz. So part of it, just was kind of one of those things, you just hear it. But I want to say for sure that I made a direct connection to that Aerosmith video or that album when I chose to do that.
Well, it's one of the things that, like I said, when I listened to it, and you didn't tell me that I could recall beforehand, but I was like, all right, yep, I get where that influence is coming from there. But at the same time, I don't feel like I'm listening to an 80s Aerosmith song. It feels current, it feels fresh, it feels good, with a tip of the cap to that era.
Well,
nice.
Thank you. Part of what we tried to do is with every song we did, we made a conscious effort, but we didn't make a conscious effort. It was kind of like, we wanted it to sound familiar to people. Like, oh, this reminds me of something, when I think it's, I have it right here. I have it right here. Get It Together, okay. And I want to tell Paul, maybe Paul tell the story about that. I had very much the idea when he played it for me of like what I wanted. I had the whole vision of the song. So okay. Paul, why don't you just tell quickly about how that, and tell it the truth of this real story of that, because I think it's really cool.
The riff, the rhythm, the opening rhythm, I had that from like the 80s in one of my earlier bands that I was writing, and the band kind of thought it was cheesy sounding, but I played it for Ben, and he was like, I like that. That's a song.
Yes.
I can do something with that. And it was just like he said, you could tell right away he had the whole, like what he wanted, what he wanted in the song.
Right.
And what's interesting about how we tracked a lot of this stuff, and Paul could attest to this, he would play me the riff, or as we like to joke around, say the riffs. Riffs. He would play me a riff. We would jam in the room a little bit. I'd pick up the bass or maybe the guitar, kind of give some melody ideas. And a lot of the songs, I say, all right, come in the drum room with me. And we go in the drum room. And with him playing the rhythm within my ears, I would lay out the entire arrangement of the song. It's not like we wrote all the parts, drum. Some of the stuff I did totally on the fly, you know?
Well, I
So,
think one of the things to me that's coming out is just the belief you guys have in each other. Because Paul, as you're saying that riff to get it together, what you wrote in the 80s, the first thing I wrote when I heard that song was like, what a great opening riff. I swear, that's in my notes here right now. I'm like, is it a Dokken riff? Is it an early Bon Jovi riff? Like what does this riff feel? And I didn't know you wrote that in the 80s, but that was the feel I had.
That was the, yeah.
That I was like, that's just a great opening riff to a song. And it's just one of the things hearing the two of you guys talk and you complimenting Vinny's ear, Vinny's complimenting, hey, that's a good riff. We could do something with that. I think that part of the chemistry comes through in these songs because, like I said, that's what I wrote down on this note. Great opening riff to this song.
Oh, thank you.
yeah. And to that point, I specifically told Paul when we did that because I think, you know, sometimes lyrics get overlooked, and I'm not, you know, claiming to be no Bernie Taupin or whomever, you know what I mean? But when we wrote that song, I specifically said, Paul, this is going to be a little bit cheesy on the lyric. We're going to make it like a little bit of a stereotypical, you know, sexual, whatever, you know.
So I'm glad you mentioned the lyrics there. So I have to ask you guys a question. I don't know who wrote the lyric. So I know Chicago for years as the 25 or 6 to 4 has always played in my mind. Like, well, what do they mean by that? So 44 plus 1 makes 45. What are you trying to tell me? Okay. I'm listening. I'm like, what the hell are you trying to tell? I know math. I know 44 plus 1 equals 45. But what are you telling me?
So Paul came to me again one day with a verse or an idea, and again just singing along with him, you know, of what he was playing. And then I don't really recall when the chorus came, who wrote the chords, because a lot of it was collaborative. But all of a sudden, it was one of these things I blurted out. I just sang, and it's on the video, and I would love to someday release some of this stuff because it's really cool. I find it fun. And I just said, you know, because 44 plus 1 makes 45. And then after I said that a couple of times, I said, I like that. I was like, and then Paul looks at me, but what does it mean? Like, what? And I'm like, I have no idea. I don't know why I said it. So I go, let me look up the definition of the number 45. And I looked it up and it said new starts, new beginnings. I'm like, I fucking hit gold.
Spiritual enlightenment.
Spiritual enlightenment. I'm like,
yeah.
And that's where sometimes, and you know, not to get too spiritual, sometimes you really feel like there's a higher being that's feeding you stuff. Because how else does that happen? It's like, you know, it just came to me. And I want to say for that one, we got lucky because or it came from above. You know what I mean? So that's what that means. And it, you know.
And then help me, Vin. Does 25 or 6 to 4 actually mean anything?
Yeah, I think 25 or 6 to 4 was when they, from what I understand, when they were writing writing the song in the middle of the night. So 25 minutes or 25 or 6 to 4 or 4 in the morning. Something. So I think it has something.
Has something to do with the clock. Yeah, he was looking at the clock. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
This has nothing to do with the clock.
Nothing to do with the clock.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we were talking before about Paul's guitar influences, and Vin, you know, obviously you sing all the songs on this. In terms of vocal influences for you when you're recording these songs, is there somebody that you're thinking of or that you channel? I know obviously in the band, you guys do mostly songs by male artists, but then you also cover some female artists, which I think is really cool that you guys do that. So is there anybody that you're thinking of or channeling as you're recording these vocals?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there were spots. I mean, if you hear something like, you know, I Don't Want to Know, or if you hear Song of a Lifetime, or you hear The Blacklist, you're going to hear very different songs. Yes. Or even on the one that just might, there's one part in the second verse where there's a repeat vocal that comes in, and I'm thinking Lane Staley of Alice in Chains. That was done on purpose, like to give this like deeper, like this kind of voice I put on. Beside your throne. There's I think it's Get It Together at the end is like an it was kind of a Bon Jovi thing from their second album that reminded me of I think it was Breakout. I think it might have been the song Breakout. You know, that kind of was an influence. Like I didn't think at the time, what's that Bon Jovi song? I just listening to the music, it was always something. I always like that acapella, as some people say acapella vocal. And if you listen throughout, you'll hear a lot of harmony stuff and stuff like that, and oohs and ahs and stuff like that. I that's from my old school of writing Beatles, totally Beatles. Even a lot of the Kiss stuff they did in the, you know, in the early years was a lot of the 3-part harmonies. But yeah, there was definitely some vocal challenges in that. And I think Paul helped a lot with that also, kind of with approach, because I think, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, everything I tracked pretty much was with you in the room. Yeah. So I was getting feedback from him. Watch your pitch, you're flat there, you know, getting yelled at, you know, but trying to really push it. I really tried to push like especially like on something like the Blacklist, where I really tried to sound more aggressive, soft at first, then really kind of giving it a lot of attitude, but then in the chorus giving it like a little sweetness too with the harmonies. Like I wanted people listening to all the songs to kind of be going on a ride like this, you know, where it doesn't go up too high, then fall down too low. It's kind of, you're going to have that in songs, but I really wanted to kind of be a fun listening experience.
Well, I'm smiling, at least for myself, because I didn't know how you were going to answer that question, right? We say all the time before we record these things, we do not go over all the things we're going to talk about. But and I said before, I wrote down in my notes, Get It Together reminds me of early Bon Jovi, Roulette. The hardest part is the night, Roulette. and I didn't remember that you were gonna. I didn't know that you were gonna.
I forgot what song it was, but
yeah,
Roulette, was it Roulette?
Well, Breakout's another song on the first album, so you know, And then the one who just might have question marks near the verse, question marks near the pre-chorus, like where have I heard this voice? And then eventually I wrote down Stone Temple Pilots with a question mark. So I knew it had like a little bit of a 90s feel to it, and then you said Lane Stanley. I'm like, all right, I was in the ballpark. So, and that's one of the things, again, that I love about this. Like I'm sitting there, I'm like, ooh, this is familiar. This is familiar, yet this is new. This is fresh. Where? And I went Stone Temple Pilots, you went Alice in Chains, you know, same family.
Kind of in the same neighborhood, really same neighborhood.
Exactly.
It could have been Scott Weiland, right? Scott Weiland, was that?
Yeah.
Weiland. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Now, Paul, you know, when we first started here, you were mentioning that, you know, you played in bands for years, since the 80s or whatever. And I know one of the things Vin told me, and I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit. Vin, we all grew up in Brooklyn, right? And you played, it sounds like multiple times, the legendary L'Amour. So I need to hear about that, because everybody knows L'Amour. I don't care where, you didn't have to live in Brooklyn to know that club. That was like one of the clubs in the world that everybody spoke about. What was it like playing L'Amour?
Playing it was, well, it was quite an experience. I mean, there's no other places. I mean, you know, we're playing the cover bands, you know, we have like maybe a little stage. Here you had like a real stage with, you know, lighting system and a humongous PA system, you know, and you get to open for some really, you know, great national acts. So, you know, it was, if you were into metal at the time, or even just, you know, hard rock, that was the place on the weekends. So even when I wasn't playing, I would go there. I mean, you know, a lot of times it was to give out passes for a show we had coming up or something. But
do you remember any of the big national acts? Could you name anybody that you opened up for?
Definitely Kicks was one of them. That was one of the bigger ones. I think we got to open for them twice. I was in 3 different bands. I was in a band called Torah, I was in a band called Sir Duke, and then I was in a band that I don't even want to say the name, but it was more like
Piston. I want to say it.
It sounded like a punk band, but it was more like Metallica meets Smashing Pumpkins. But that was, you know, we had the manager from Typo Negative that was managing the band.
Oh, wow.
And he actually got us, you know, I mean, my heart was more in the 80s stuff. But now, you know, with this band, it's like it was around 92. So I kind of joined this band and, you know, was doing more of that Metallica, Smashing Pumpkins. You know, and there we got to open up for some pretty big bands. Anthrax with the Misfits. We did like a short, you know, stint. Typo Negative, Life of Agony. But you know, and we played with them at L'Amour too. But with the 80s stuff and let me think. A lot of those 80s bands, Bang Tango, Danger, we opened for, you know, bands like that. There might be more. I just
do
can't
you remember
think of
what year it was you opened for Kicks out of curiosity? I know I'm putting you on the spot here. It was like decades ago.
I think once was, I want to say 87. Maybe there was 87 and 89 or 88. Yeah.
And so I'm asking that because, you know, and Vin knows this, Kicks is probably one of my 5 favorite live bands of all time. I just
They
think
they were great. Great. The thing is, I wasn't a big Kicks fan, and then after we played, and I went out and I watched them, and I was just like, wow. I mean, especially this, you know, Steve, the front
Steve
man.
Whiteman. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. To me, he's one of the greatest frontmen to me of all time. I love his personality and all of that. But I was at basically every Kicks show at L'Amour's from 1989 until they closed. So now I'm sitting here wondering, I wonder if I saw your band open up one of those shows. And here we are 30 years later talking.
That would be funny. Yeah. I'm trying to remember what bands. I think there was another band on the bill. One was called Push.
Okay.
I can't remember the other. I can't remember the other one.
Well, if ever you think of which shows it was for Kicks, if it was an 89 show, you have to let me know, because definitely starting, I think it was June 30th, 1989 was the first time I saw Kicks at L'Amour's. I remember that date. So for anything there and beyond, I was certainly at your show, and just we didn't know each other.
That'd be funny,
yeah. Too bad I used to record all the shows, but I didn't record the opening acts. Imagine if I was like, "Hey, Paul, guess what? I have your show here at L'Amour's." That would have been cool. But
you would have seen a very scared guy with a big fro.
Oh, really?
You would not even know if you saw him back in the day. He would be right. He had this long hair,
curly, long hair,
no shirt. Right, you used to run around with no shirt.
Sometimes, yeah.
As scary as that makes.
It sounds like that's one thing Paul and I had in common, because I had a big fro in the 80s also.
He did. People used to mistake him for Mark Storace or from Crocus.
Oh, yes. Crocus singer.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Oh, man. You know, one of the other songs on the album that I love, and you know, we haven't mentioned the band I'm going to compare it to, and I hope you guys aren't offended by this, but the first song on the CD, I Don't Want to Know. To me, that song starts, and right off the top, and it's one of my favorite songs from, it's 1990, but I'm going to say the 80s. Coming of Age of Damn Yankees, and I hear this song start, and I'm like, oh man, I love that song. And instantly your song, I Don't Want to Know, ropes me in with that same feel as that Damn Yankees song, which again is maybe one of my top 30 songs of the decade.
I long to find the truth.
Talk about that song, and where were your influences when you were writing that one?
Well, definitely not an insult, and I'll start it because I'll say that Vinny played that opening melody, and I'm like, what am I going to do with that? You know?
Literally went like that. He kind of is. I'll play something for him. I think I had it on video. He goes, "Yeah." Well, I'm like, "Do you like it?" He's like, the one thing with Paul when you write with him, it's not like this. Oh, that's really good. Like he sits and marinates,
I have to
and
process it. Yeah,
and he's like, I hear like crackling, like I'm hearing like he's thinking. You know, it's like navigating through the cobwebs and stuff. But then he'll give the feedback. But it's like you have that nervous moment as a writer because you want the person you're writing with to kind of like what you're doing, and
sure.
it's always hard when it gets dismissed, especially if you feel really strongly about something. But
but I took it home and I messed around with it, and you know, and developed probably that part that reminds you of Damn Yankees is the verse, right? The rhythm in the verse.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we put that all together, and it was like this song just kind of came together, and he just started scatting, you know, words, and that was probably one of the easier songs to write.
It's probably my favorite on the disc. It's catchy as hell. In fact, Vin, you know, you played for me, what, 150 songs you've written over the years, and I'll put this in the top 5% easily. That's how much I love that song. And you know, the opening riff when the song first starts, I'm thinking, oh, this has like a King of Hearts feel from Kiss, which is an obscure Kiss song. And then instantly I'm like, oh no, now it feels like Coming of Age from Damn Yankees. And then all of a sudden the verse, the chorus comes in. I'm like, nope, doesn't feel like that song anymore. It kind of brings me on a journey of like so many songs that I love. Yet again, it's different.
Yeah. And I think this was definitely conscious when I sat down to do the drum part on that. I was thinking Foo Fighters. I was thinking Dave Grohl. I was thinking that ding 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 boom dum 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 dum, you know, like in the intro, and then it's the same for the chorus.
Yep.
which is kind of like, you know, a lot of choruses, whatever. You're doing a ride groove, you're doing a, you know, a crash groove or a hi-hat thing. But I wanted to have that more tribal sound for the chorus.
I tried to say the words.
Right.
But I definitely and I remember saying to Paul, I think I got what Foo Fighters-ish, and whether it is that or not, but that's what I was thinking in my mind for that, you know?
Right. And to me, that's one of the things that I love is you could have that Foo Fighters, and I'm thinking, damn, Yankees, even coming out of the guitar solo, I'm like, oh, this reminds me a little bit of like Tell Me from White Line a little bit.
Yeah.
And but yet the drums, and I hear what you're saying 100%. I'm like, yeah, I could feel that Foo Fighters feel to this, which I love the Foo Fighters as well. And that's one of the things that I love is it's taken really all the music I love from the 80s and 90s, specifically this song, and blending it all together into something new and exciting.
Well, what's really interesting about that song, we've kind of, even before the CD is going to come out, we've kind of beta tested that song, and we've been playing it live for a couple of months now, and a lot of people and people we don't know come up to us, say, really like that original. Now, you know, we're a cover band. We're doing maybe 38 songs in a night, 41 songs in a night. But for the most part, we've been able to like beta test that song, and we've just gotten a tremendous amount of positive response. And where people come up to us, you're going to play that original tonight, right? You're going to play the original. And we're like, yeah, you have more. So that's what's really exciting about, you know, the CD and not only just the CD that we have, but also that's going to be available on all the streaming platforms.
And I want to elaborate on that in a moment, but I just want to also say, you know, so Paul was talking earlier about Van Halen and the influence of the band and all. Remember, that's the way Van Halen started. Van Halen started as a cover band, mixing in a couple of originals on a nightly basis. So maybe that's the winning formula here, guys.
Possibly. You know, the funny thing is, you know, Paul and I, and I credit Paul a lot about this. He is still a very strong believer, even at our age. Not that we're like older than dirt, but we are older than we were our L'Amour days. But Paul is a very strong believer in the music and potentially of something happening. I'm not saying we're going to be some sort of touring act, whatever, but, you know, I think we both would love something to happen with these songs, so, you know, even get them published. So, you know, that's been my dream, even with this other stuff that I did. You know, if somebody else does the song and loves the song and it wants, you know, that'd be awesome. You know, Dave Grohl, if you're listening, listen, I already wrote you a Foo Fighters song, or we wrote you a Foo Fighters song, you know,
that's right,
for a small fee, you know, but so that's what I love. It's like, that's what helps drive you to do things. Cause it's casual, but it's not.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's casual in the sense that like, we're not putting a lot of pressure on each other, but we also really firmly believe that it's really good, and that potentially maybe there is still a chance that something could happen with this music and this material.
Absolutely. So to that point then, Vin, you know, you mentioned and you showed before the physical product. How could people find this, be it physical product, be it streaming, whatever it may be? How could people find these songs?
I'll just put it to you this way. I'm going to look at my calendar. It will be available for streaming on all the services by this weekend, or by the 9th and the 10th of March. We should have it. Everything's been fully approved by the company that does that, but it'll be on Apple Music, it'll be on Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Tidal, Pandora. There's 50-something services. We do have a physical CD that we are having a CD release party. Depending on how many people come to this event, we're hoping a lot. We'll be handing these out for free. But I've also seen people, some common people who we know, say, I want a CD. How can I get a CD? So I am willing to, if somebody wants to respond into in the comments from this video and are interested in the CD, I'll be more than happy to send them a CD.
Excellent. And then the physical, if they want a physical CD, is there a cost for that? What's the cost?
There'll be no cost for the CDs.
For that. Who's better than you guys? No cost for the CDs.
We love the music so much. We love that people support your show, and we are more than happy. If we're going to hand these out to free to our family, or if I once said in the video recent, our family and friends, family, we consider everybody in the community, especially people who are part of your show, as the same.
Well, if anybody's in the Brooklyn area this Friday and they want to come see us in person, and they'll get a free CD.
Absolutely.
Where in Brooklyn are you guys playing?
And some Doritos. I think
And Doritos. And
provide
Doritos.
salty snacks.
Where are you guys playing on Friday night?
The Leaf Bar, 67th Street and 5th Avenue.
All right.
In Brooklyn, New York.
Bayridge,
Brooklyn.
Anything else you guys want to talk about with the CD, or even just like the music you've grown up listening to, your influences, etc.?
I think one of the things that's very important for us to talk about, because I don't not want to acknowledge the two other guys who are in the Dexters. Okay. And although, you know, with all due respect, they didn't play on this, or they didn't write anything on here, but they've been very much supporters of us doing this, especially doing this event, playing the original music. So I want to give a shout out to our bandmates Matt and to John, known as Situation and Kit Kat. I want to thank them for being very supportive of us, and because this could take a very different turn. If you look at the back of this, you know, John designed the cover and the back, and he did the logo, the fantastic logo that you can't see. Paul's been wearing the shirt too. There you go.
There you go.
So those guys are as much a part of this as we are, and I just want to, you know, acknowledge those guys about that.
So you're saying one of the guys in the band actually created the logo and all of that?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And the whole thing with the Dexters was it was just an accidental. You know, we all wear glasses. So one day we weren't even talking about finding a band name. I don't know, or thinking of a band name. I think I just said, you know, we're just like a bunch of freaking Poindexters with our glasses. And I was like, hey, what about the Dexters? And there it is. I've struggled all my musical life to find good band names. It's always been like the hardest thing to do. Now I'm saying this is the greatest name in the world, but it's just like, it just worked like immediately. And then John doing, you know, the thing with the glasses on the thing. It just, and the title Atypical, that was another thing I just thought was like, the songs are kind of atypical, kind of the way, like, again, if you listen to Song of a Lifetime, it's very different from everything on there.
Yep.
And what I love about that song is, you know, the song starts with the guitar, which Paul wrote the opening riff or progression. And then once the drum beat comes in, people go, why does it sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because it's the drum groove from 50 Ways to Leave a Lover from Paul Simon.
I've watched the days go by, even while time stands still.
Oh, wow.
Again, when we were in the studio, I got like the mad scientist. I know what the beat's gonna work with this, you know. And he's like, "What?" I said, "No, this is gonna work," you know. And then I put it on, and we started, and he's like, "Yeah, that works." And
I got
then
chills.
we go chills, and it was one of those things like, "Can we do this?" Then we're researching like about, you know, sampling, you know, samples and stuff like that. Like, yeah, when Al and I put out the Kiss tribute or whatever we want to call it, you know, albums that are going to come out, we got to get clearance for that. We got to, you can't just, but wasn't sure about this, but as it turns with drums, it's just the drum group. We didn't take any music from it, just the drums. And we were able to do that.
That is awesome.
So,
well, you know, one of the things I'm realizing as we wrap up here is I blew it today for myself personally. You want to know why?
Why?
I put in my contact lenses 15 minutes before we recorded. Why wasn't I wearing my glasses in honor of the
there you go.
Dexters?
Come on.
I blew it, man. What the hell was I thinking? You're talking about everybody in the band wears glasses. I'm like, I should have been wearing my glasses for this. What the hell? I wasn't thinking, but I wanted to make sure you guys shined. That's it. And stood out. That's it. I want you guys to stand out.
Thank you.
So, but anyway, again, just one more time, Vin, tell people where they can contact, how they should contact, comment, or whatever, if they want a copy of the CD.
Well, as I would suspect, most people are doing streaming these days.
Yes.
So no matter what streaming service you use, it's going to be available on it.
Yep.
So again, Apple Music, Amazon Music, YouTube, Tidal, Spotify, obviously, all the biggies, it'll be available. We did do a limited amount of CDs, and so this is a collector's edition. And perhaps we'll even sign it. If somebody wants one, we'll even sign it. Because I actually got people who said, can I have a signed copy? Mm-hmm. I'm like, all right, let me get a silver Sharpie ready. Right. You know, so I will as I said earlier, if people want to leave a comment that they really would like to. But you know what? Also, I think would be a great way. Like us on Facebook. We have a Facebook page. You could always leave a comment there too. And with Facebook Messenger, I could directly message people too. It might be just an easier way. But we would love for people to go to our Dexters page, and not only for the original music that we're doing, but also the stuff we're doing with the cover songs, and we're posting videos, and we're doing stuff of some of the songs that we do. And as you said, we do everything from, Dreamin' by Blondie to Enter Sandman. So we try to, cover
And
a
it's
lot of different
amazing because you
genres.
sing both of those and sing both convincingly, which
Thank
I don't
you.
know how you managed to do that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But guys, this has been an absolute blast. Paul, we got to do this
Likewise.
again to talk about just guitarists and all of that. I really loved hearing
I
some
would
of your
love that.
thoughts. And one of these days we'll have to dig a little bit more into some of that, because I think you've got a lot of a good point of view on that. Certainly.
He could
does for me.
he could
Thank
really
you.
be honest about Ace Frehley.
That's right. We'll really dig into your opinion of Ace Frehley. I'll force you. I was like, I'm not letting anybody hear your CD. I'm gonna sabotage that unless I hear your true opinion on Ace Frehley.
And let me just say this, because I don't want to paint that, it's not like he dislikes Ace Frehley. That's not it at all.
Started off
But-
saying it was one of the first bands he listened to and one of the
That's
first
right.
guitarists, right? So
Yeah, that's right. So that's why I just want to make that very clear.
yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, guys, again, this has been a blast. I want to thank you both for your time. Everybody else watching and listening, go like the Facebook page, the Dexters. Check out the songs on
The
all the
Dexters
streaming.
Band. It's facebook.com, the Dexters Band.
There you go.
And maybe you could put that in the.
I will make
comment.
sure it's in the description right underneath the
description,
video so that people could go find it very easily. Go check out the streaming services for the CD. I'll put the links in there once you have them as well, Vin. And
Mhm.
I think people are going to really love it. You guys did a great job with this. So I'm looking forward to hearing people's
Thank you.
reactions to it.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Mike.
Thank you for
All
having us.
right. On that
Great.
note, Vin, you know the way we end this. Paul, this is going to be new for you. Double Ringo.
Double Ringo.
All right, there you go, Paul.
And it's almost Easter time, so Easter Ringo.
Easter Ringo. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Alrighty, there you have it. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. If you play an instrument or if you're a singer, who are your influences? It could be from the 70s, 80s, 90s, anybody that you love. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your opinions. Also, you're certainly going to want to check out the new Dexters CD, Atypical. As you heard them say, you can get it for free. Just leave a comment and Vincent will contact you and get a CD in your hands. You guys are going to really love it. If you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button below. If you're listening to one of my podcasts, subscribe over there as well. Also, head on over to Facebook and follow my page, The Rock Experience with Mike Brunn, where each and every day we talk about all the rock and roll music that you love. You could also follow me on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. See you all next time.